2022 was a pretty rough year for Mark Zuckerberg and his newly rebranded Meta. And it looks like 2023 is going to be an even rougher one. The government of Britain is getting ready to pass an online safety bill, and Zuckerberg could end up in its crosshairs. Let's look at what's in the bill and how deep in trouble the Zuck really is. But first, what is this online safety bill? The online safety bill, that is what it's actually called, is an act that will regulate companies on the internet. According to the UK government's official website on the bill, the idea is to hold social media companies responsible for user safety. If the bill passes, companies like Facebook will be on the hook to ensure the safety of children and adults on the platform. The government will be expecting to keep an eye out for certain types of content, as well as changing their policies. There are different sets of expectations regarding children and adults. For starters, to protect kids, they'll be obliged to quickly remove illegal content, as well as content promoting self-harm. And they'll have to put safeguards in place to prevent kids from accessing harmful and inappropriate content in the first place. Age gating measures are among only some of the features companies will have to install, and the old age gates won't cut it either.
No matter which platform you're using, tech companies will have a legal duty to protect users from harmful content. The regulator Ofcom will even have powers to look inside the software, the algorithms that decide what content gets pushed to which users.
What we're saying is deal with those harmful algorithms, deal with that online scam advertising. Don't allow our children to have pornography just popping up on their phones and their screens. Don't allow those algorithms to send our children to suicide chat rooms. Protect our kids. And we'll also give journalists and individuals robust protections for freedom of speech.
But it's more than just policing the content itself. Companies will have to be transparent about the risk that children face on their platform. An example of that transparency would be publicly available risk assessment reports. And finally, both kids and their parents will need easy access to reporting tools for stuff that slides past all the safety measures. Speaking of parents, the requirements for ensuring the safety of adults are a little more relaxed. The bill calls for a triple shield system to protect adult users. There are 3 brief points that companies will be expected to follow. They'll have to remove all illegal content. They'll also have to remove all content that violates their own terms and conditions, with no exceptions. And finally, they must provide adult users with tools to curate the content they see on the platform. Basically, they'll have to chill with the algorithm and give users the ability to choose what they want to see and what they don't want to see. This is in contrast with the rules for kids, for whom an overly protective algorithm must remain in place. Now, we've talked a lot about illegal and harmful content, but what does the bill define as illegal or harmful? It's mostly what you'd expect. Obviously, any content that depicts abuse and harm against children is off the table. So too is extreme sexual violence. The government is also looking to put its foot down on anything that promotes criminal activities. This ranges from relatively minor stuff to fraud, all the way to trafficking, selling of drugs or weapons, terrorism, and inciting violence or hate crimes. The only thing that's really new here is that content that blatantly promotes self-harm and suicide is straight up illegal now. As for the range of harmful content, this is stuff that the government acknowledges might not be illegal, but is still barred from social media. While adults may be able to access this content at their own discretion, it'll have to be completely off limits for kids. What's a little more interesting is that content that portrays self-harm, suicide, and even eating disorders could be classified as harmful. It's just that there's a certain line that it can't cross. I think it's easy to imagine what that line could look like. While social media companies try to figure out how to get around these restrictions, it's worth taking a look at what'll happen if they're caught. Cuss offenders can expect a visit from their old mate Ofcom. The government's communications regulator will be in charge of monitoring the platforms as well as slapping companies with penalties. Social platforms will have to show Ofcom that they're taking steps to implement the new policies.
Like many teens, Katie sought solace online. But it was in these online communities that she was exposed to relentless content that fed her illness and starved her.
And looking back now, how does it feel knowing teenage you was seeing that kind of stuff? How does it make you feel?
I think it's really, really dangerous, and it makes me feel quite angry that all of that is out there, was out there.
As far as punishments go, Ubcom can fine the platforms up to £18 million or 10% of their annual global turnover, whichever is greater. On top of that, senior managers will personally be held criminally liable for not following Ubcom's instructions. So far, it might sound like this bill doesn't have enough teeth to really cause problems for companies like Meta, but Ubcom does have the right to take companies downtown, or should I say central, in the most extreme cases. Depending on how the courts rule, the company can be frozen out of dealings with payment processors, advertisers, and even internet service providers. That's basically the same thing as exile from the UK, a mass market. And what's more, the law doesn't just apply to companies that operate in the UK. You can absolutely get hammered by Ubcom as long as your service is accessible by British users. At this point, you might be starting to see why Mark Zuckerberg is in trouble here. Like, the guy hasn't done the best job of regulating his social platforms. You don't need me to tell you that Facebook has been responsible for spreading all kinds of harmful social contagions. It's the website that, even in the toxic social media world, is being left behind for being a little too toxic. On an individual user level, Facebook has been blamed for causing a spike in eating disorders, depression, and suicidal thoughts. But on a macro level, Facebook has been involved in events that have had global ramifications. For example, the site played a key role in spreading anti-vaccine misinformation, which held us back from surviving the COVID pandemic. It has been blamed for racial violence in Burma, India, and Ethiopia. And of course, it was used to organize the January 6th riot at the US Capitol. While the online safety bill doesn't directly address misinformation, it would tackle the type of content I've just mentioned. In this way, the UK can help make the world a safer place. Now, I've been talking about Facebook in particular, but y'all know that it isn't the only one with dirty hands. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all social platforms that need a kick in what the British call the bum. And being locked out of the United Freaking Kingdom isn't something that any of these companies can afford. So, if the bill passes, we can look forward to a better future for social media. Now, I know you must be excited, but I'm gonna have to temper your excitement just a little bit. If you venture beyond this video and research this bill, you'll find that there's a lot of skepticism about it. The truth is, while the bill's aims are obviously worth getting excited about, its content has left a little to be desired. The truth is, its definitions of what content falls into what bucket aren't any more detailed than my explanations of it. A broad brush is great for painting over malicious content, but it can also have unintended effects. For instance, Wikipedia obviously has a lot of content that would run afoul of this bill. Is it about to get banned? Similarly, YouTube and TikTok are platforms often used by people living amidst violence or fleeing it. These platforms give them a chance to tell their stories. Are they about to get banned in the UK as well? Who knows? But I bet it won't be long before we find out. Anyways, that's been the latest on the online safety bill and why tech bros like Mark Zuckerberg should be afraid of it. See you next time with even more amazing content.